So thank you, Oi, so much for the invitation, for the introduction, and especially for the shameless plug that you gave to my book. I really appreciate that. I wish I could be there, but unfortunately I was unable to. But technology is here to help. Could we have the first slide, please? And because I cannot see the slides, can somebody give me, can confirm that the first slide is on?
It's on. It begins a quick history.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So let me give you a super quick history of some key developments in the 19th century that I think are frame the kind of issue that we're talking about today, about the stewardship of knowledge. From the author's point of view, really crucial changes happened in the 19th century, much more than in the 17th century when first the scientific journals were introduced. So from the author's point of view, what happened mostly is that the notion of publications really becomes narrowed down to publishing in academic journals, including things that are connected to publications, such as the establishment of priority. Starting in the mid-19th century, if you want to get priority, you have to publish in a journal published by a state academy, okay? And this is, the second point is even more important. Until then, and this may sound peculiar to us, the notion of publication was still connected to presenting one's work at an academy. So you give a talk in front of your peers, and the talk would be eventually published in the journal of the academy, but that could happen years later, many years later, okay? So there was really a tension between presenting knowledge orally and then publishing it. So to the point that publishing was more like archiving, because it happened so much later than the presentation that it was really a form of archiving, not publication. So at this point, the authors become quite anxious about reforming the publication process so that the knowledge could come out faster. And this is where the new notion of the journal comes up. So not the philosophical transaction, but the journals that we have today emerge in this period as a response to these super slow journals that the state academies used to publish. So the philosophical transactions by this time are, a dinosaur, as well as, say, the memoirs of the Académie des Sciences. Okay. I will skip the part about peer review, and I would like to have the next slide.
The next slide is up.
Okay. So what happens effectively is that at this point, knowledge becomes literature. And I cannot stress this enough. In the early 19th century, people still connected knowledge to conversation, to presentations of papers. Instead, now it becomes literature. And in this famous line by Maxwell, he says that we have gone from the book of nature to the magazine of nature. So what is happening at this time also is that scientists need to start developing their curriculum vitae, which is not something that existed before. So you cannot have a 100-page article coming out every 6 years. You need to have a lot of smaller pieces coming out faster so that you can put them on the curriculum vitae, so that you can have an academic career. So what is important to me is that at this point, the notion of publication is already connected to the kind of the article format that we know today. Something that is reasonably short, that can be published quickly, so people can have a growing CV and can get jobs. Next slide.
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Okay, so from the point of view of the publishers, very briefly, I'm not going to cover all these lines. what matters is that this development that I just talked to you about was really fostered by the entry into the market of private publishers. So the big academies, the Royal Society, the Académie des Sciences in Paris, are pushed forward by people like Taylor and Francis, who come in and they start publishing reports about what scientists say at these meetings. Okay, so the academies respond by publishing journals with titles like Proceedings, right? So the new journal, even the ones published by the scientific academies, is a response to the entrance of private publishers in the market, publishers that are publishing something like magazines, so to speak. So the current journal is a hybrid between a magazine and the older journal. Okay. Now, let me move to the next slide and show you the legal peculiarities of scientific authorship. So what I've tried to give you now is a quick sketch of, if you want, the peculiarities of the history of publishing. Now, the legal part. Is the slide up?
Yes, the slide is up.
Okay. So this is a quote from an 18th century pamphlet that was published during the debate on copyright, the development of copyright in England. So what matters here, this author that we don't know who is referring to the dispute on the invention of calculus between Newton and Leibniz. And look at the last part. In what court of justice could have Sir Isaac have instituted a suit for a reparation of his injury? I will endure to affirm that he could have had no redress in any court. So let's move to the next slide and I'll show you what this person had in mind.
Next slide is up.
Okay, so here I need to compress. So let's look at the row in the middle of the table, the one that has property rewards. So this slide, that I wish I could go through it more carefully, shows that the way scientific authorship is constructed is radically different from the way the author is constructed by copyright law or the inventor by patent law. So the peculiarity of science publishing is not only connected to what I showed you before about this hybrid format between, say, the magazine of Nature that reports the news of nature and the archival function of, say, the old memoirs of the Académie des Sciences, but there is also a very peculiar notion of the author. The author is really independent. The scientific author is a construct that is not dependent on the law, and actually it's quite different from the way the author is constructed by copyright law. Can I have the next slide, please?
It's up.
Okay, so what is happening as a result of the convergence of certain publishing trends and the long-standing peculiarities of scientific authorship? So it seems to me that, say, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, all the conversation about scientific authorship was over issues of credit and responsibility. How can we ascertain those two things in an environment of multi-authorship? Copyright didn't matter. Copyright was important to the publishers, but not to the authors. Now, in the age of open access, copyright is becoming reconnected to the author. So the scientific author is still construed through these customs and modalities and norms of that I've shown in the table, but now it's also becoming closer to the traditional author of copyright. Next and last slide. Thank you.
It's up.
So one of perhaps the biggest challenges that I see, and that's why I've shown those slides about the 19th century, is that I think we're seeing a replay of some of those same problems. In the 19th century, you had very slow-moving journals, and that triggered the emergence of the new journal, this hybrid between the old journal and the magazine, something that can come out fairly quickly and can really produce publication rather than archiving. So what we see today is that there is a lot of publication forms around the journal. So scientists, they blog endlessly. They tweet about their work. So in a sense, a lot of people say about journals today what they said in the past. That is, they are slow, they are not effective ways of disseminating knowledge. So they're being pushed forward again by other modalities of publications that are not really yet recognized as publications, such as blogging and so on. The other issue is that I showed how, in the 19th century, knowledge became literature, and now, especially with the data-intensive research, we're seeing that the notion of literature that really used to be just text, now it's being challenged. So on one side, so the two challenges I see are mostly about how to make new kind of work fit the box publication, especially the notion of data. And the other issue is how to handle the challenges that are emerging around the journal concerning new modes of dissemination through social media, blogs, and other things. So again, it seems to me that there is a bit of a replay of the 19th century in what we're seeing now. And that's why I tried to give you that super brief sketch of what happened then. And I've spoken for 2 more minutes, so I will say goodbye and have a great conversation. I'm sorry that I will miss it.
Thank you so much for being able to Skype in at such an early hour. Really appreciate it, Mario.
You're very welcome. Goodbye, Roy.